My name's Evelyn Asante-Mensah. I'm chair of Pennine Care NHS Foundation Trust, which is a mental health trust, mental health and learning disabilities. And this is my second term. I've been at the trust for 3 years. But previous to that, I've worked in the voluntary section and been involved in the NHS for quite some considerable time in Manchester and Greater Manchester. I think that quite often when I go into rooms, people don't expect the chair of a primary care trust or the chair of an NHS trust to be me, to be a black woman. And there is one, not just one. I mean, there's lots of suggestions, but one that has stuck in my mind for years. It makes me laugh because I went to a meeting as chair of NHS Manchester, and at the time we commissioned services from sickle cell. We commissioned the Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Centre, and so I went to a meeting. It was about hemoglobinopathies, and when I got to the meeting, I had let them know that I was going to be a little late for the meeting. And I got there, the chair of the meeting asked me if I had brought the refreshments for the meeting, and it made me wonder whether it was something about what I was wearing that made her think that I was part of the help, and I just said no. And I sat down and then I introduced myself, and I think they knew then that it was a bit of a faux pas, to say the least. The chair then had a conversation, the chair of the group then had a conversation with my chief exec and told my chief exec how eloquent she thought I was, because clearly I spoke English. Um, and I think it's a lot of the time it's not overt. A lot of the time people won't say it, even though, well, I own it, even though I can feel it and see it, that I'm not who they thought they were going to be having to encounter. It makes me feel really sad, and it makes me feel angry and frustrated, because I can remember a time when there were a lot of people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds that were sitting around boards, not anywhere near what we should have, but I remember a time when there were a lot more. And so, with all the restructurings that we've had within the NHS, the mergers, the demergers, what the unintended consequence of that is that a lot of people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds who were sitting at board tables, there was non-execs or directors, sort of became the casualties. And so that does make me feel, it makes me feel really sad, because there's a lot of people out there with the experiences and the skills and the expertise, and they just don't get in the door. And I think, well, what is it about them getting in the door that's so difficult? And it's the structures and it's the processes, and people don't really understand. And I think people, there's kind of a mythicism, don't even know if that's a word, but there's of the boardroom, and what the boardroom, what you have to be and how you have to be in the boardroom. When I this isn't a story about a boardroom, but when I went to on secondment to government office for the Northwest, I've never been in a place that was so white. And, I was in the voluntary sector. the organisation that I worked with and that I ran was a Black organisation. I worked and lived within Black community. People in the rooms that I was going into were much more diverse. Stepping into civil service was a bit of a shock. And I tried to operate and behave in the way that they did in the civil service. And I've described it as trying to be a middle class white man in that behaviour, um, and just really struggling with it, because I'm not, you might be able to tell, that I'm not a white middle-aged man, a middle-class man. But the way that people spoke, the way they operated, the way they interacted was difficult. And until I had a conversation with one of the I think assistant regional directors, woman called Gail Porter, and there was another guy called Brian, Brian Hume, and we were talking, and it was like a light bulb moment where I thought, they didn't appoint me because I was behaving like a white man. They appointed me because they wanted the experience that I would bring. And that experience included, was about being a Black woman. And I saw things, from a different perspective and through different lenses. And it wasn't until then, in that environment, that I felt that actually I could be who I am, and that I began to do the job and love the job, and thrive in the job. And I think that for a lot of people, you go into an organisation and you want to fit in, and so you modify your behaviour so you fit in. And actually, the organisation has to be ready for you to come in, and has to be open to what you're bringing. Because if if they're not open to what you're bringing, it doesn't matter that you're sitting around that table as a person from a black background, because what they're looking for is something that is reflected. They're then looking for behaviour that reflects their behaviour. So I think that you've got to be in the right organisation, and the organisation has got to be receptive to what you're bringing and to be open. And then I think you really will get diversity. We've just been recruiting to our board, and when I started, Edna, there was me on the board. I'm very proud to say now, and I have to count them, there's me, Nihal, we will have Maksud, Claudette, Saeed, and Nigel. There will be 6 people from Black, Asian, and minority backgrounds, and it will change not just the complexion, because those people aren't just sitting there because they come from a different background. They're sitting there because they're bringing some phenomenal skills, experience, and expertise with them. And I feel very privileged to have been able to do that, and to be able to say, this is what I'm looking for, and working with, and we did work with a recruitment agency, but being really firm about what it is that I'm looking for. And when they brought me a long list of people to look at, and I remember it because I got it on a Friday, and I was really angry when I looked at it, because they'd split it into 3 categories. Category A were those who they were definite interview. Category B was marginal. Category C was don't even look at the application. Or, and I looked at category A, and all bar one of the, I think it was 8 or 9 people, were white. And category B, the marginals, was the other way around. And I just thought, how does that work? One, because I knew a lot of the people that were in both category A and B. And I thought, well, how does that work? And then went back to them, and I said, I was ranting, I have to say, but I didn't rant at them. What I said was, you need to assure me that there has been no unintended bias in this list, because I don't understand how you can say this person has got, you know, is above the line, so to speak, for interview, and that person isn't, when actually their experience, you know, is, and tell them to go away and re-look at it. And they did, in fairness to them, came back and said actually the process that they had used had given different weighting to the experience of people that they'd put on. But actually, when you look at what we were looking for, the weighting was, you know, there wasn't, there was no more justification for one somebody on who wasn't. And we were, they came back having re-looked at it with a completely different looking list. You know, I want my grandkids to be able to do whatever it is that they do and not, you know, think I'm not going to progress because. And I've told all my kids, you know, racism is there. It's, you know, it's there. You will face it. However, don't wear it like a badge of honor. You know, they, and it makes me sad. I watched a program called The Talk. Don't know if you saw, if you've seen it, but it was, and I remember having this talk with my kids. Black parents telling their black children, do you know what, you're going to have to be 10 times, 5 times better than, you know, your mates, because, you know, because that's what you're just going to have to do. And people are still saying it now. My oldest is 34, you know, people are still saying it now. It's just not right. It's not right. I think we've got, it feels like we're in kind of like a bit of a perfect storm, in the sense that we had COVID and we had Black Lives Matter, and you know, what happened to George Floyd was tragic, absolutely. It was just unbelievable. Um, and it took that for people to say enough is enough. And then you look at, you know, what was happening with COVID, you just think it's so stark. Why is that? Enough is enough. And I think that that has kind of come together, and people are saying, we can do as many reports as we want, but we know, you know, we've known this for years. You know, I have said Black people didn't just happen in March. You know, health inequalities didn't just happen in March. We've been talking about it for years, and we've not made enough progress. And I think that now people are hungry for change, and people want action. And what I'm encouraged by is that people within our region have said, yes, we want to be involved. Yes, we will nominate somebody to be part of the assembly. Yes, we want to look at how we, you know, how we can move forward on this agenda. We don't want our boardrooms to look, you know, just white anymore, but we want people to feel as if they can, that they have a place and a right, which of course that they do have a place and a right. You know, when people ask me, where are you from? And I used to say Manchester, and then they go, where are you really from? And you think, well, Wally Range. And then it's like, where are your parents from? Because somehow they need to legitimize who you are. Now, I wasn't born here. I was born in Ghana, but I came here when I was 5. I'm 55 now. So, you know, I'm more English than I am. I was socialized here. So when people ask me where I'm from, I'm very proud of my Ghanaian heritage, wouldn't let go of it for anything. Okay, I'm from England. This is my home. This is the home of, you know, when my children were born. This is where my father is buried. You know, going to Ghana is like a bit of a holiday. But it's that sense of belonging. And I just think, you know, the country needs to recognize we belong here. What I want to see is young people being really proud of who they are and the society accepting them. One of the books I read that I just was Natives by Akala. Um, and I, I couldn't put it down, really. I couldn't stop listening to it. And there were things in there that made me feel very, um, very sad. He talks about in in education, um, he was put in a remedial class without telling his parents being told, or it being discussed. He had a friend whose parents were told that their son was very bright and intelligent and loved this, um, and was answering too many questions in class. So could they talk to him so that he didn't answer all the questions in class, because he was making the white kids feel bad, and it reminded me of a similar conversation that my grandson's teacher had with my daughter, um, about not being too gung ho with him with his reading. And she came back and she said, "What did he mean?" And I said, "They're telling you to hold him back. And actually, what they should have been saying to you is he's you know, he's quite ahead, and so we're going to do this for him. But what they're doing is telling you to hold him back." And I just thought that was really appalling, absolutely appalling, really. And so, you know, young black kids, particularly young black boys, are not supported. They're not encouraged, and then they're seen or labeled to be disruptive. But that's because the education system doesn't meet their needs. So we are in, I think, quite a unique space and time now, where, you know, we've got a window of opportunity. My impatience is the window's not going to stay open for forever. And so we need to really do a lot of things. So when that window is short, there's a lot of us inside, um, and not you know, and not stood outside looking in, but we're actually inside making the change and the difference that we need to make.